everybody, welcome to the final day of Deseret Book Live. I'm Colin from LDS Living. Thank you so much for being here. We're really excited to bring you one last evening of Deseret Book Live. Today we're doing something really special. So the days that I haven't been here have been hosted by Morgan Jones, and she actually also hosts the All In podcast. All In is a podcast by LDS Living where we ask guests what it means to them to be all in the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's actually been going for quite a while. There are 75 episodes already recorded, so subscribe to it if you haven't already. You can go back and listen to it. It's perfect quarantine listening, all about the gospel, interviewing different people from different walks of life with different backgrounds and stories and perspectives on the gospel. It's really fascinating. Today, we are bringing a very special taste of that podcast, all about Mother's Day and the power of motherhood. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the time over to Morgan and her guests for that. Stay tuned at the end for our biggest giveaway ever, and we'll see you in a second. Thanks, guys.
Hello, everyone. My name is Morgan Jones, and you are watching or listening to All In. This is a podcast where every week we talk about different topics related to faith. And today we're going to be talking about the divine calling of motherhood. We have a very special treat for you as we have 3 authors from the new upcoming Deseret Book release, All Kinds of Mothers. This is a book full of great essays that you will love, but I first want to give a shout out to the women who right now are ready to turn this podcast off because you're thinking, I'm not a mother. Well, like I said, my name's Morgan. I would like to be your friend. I am also not a mother. And a couple years ago, this caused me to feel a deep sense of inadequacy. I questioned my worth. I questioned my ability to receive personal revelation. I questioned God's love for me. And ultimately, that caused an ache that was unlike anything I had ever experienced before. Like many of you, I decided to have a word for the year. And this was the beginning of 2019, and I decided that my word would be nurture. Over the course of the year, I looked for opportunities to nurture people around me. And I found that as I focused on seeking those opportunities, that while my mother heart still longs to have children and love children, I discovered a tremendous capacity to mother and to nurture those around me. I hope that as you listen to this podcast, that you'll recognize that while our experiences may be very different, and each of the mothers that you'll hear from have had very different experiences, that at the root, the emotion remains the same. And I think that that's powerful. I think that you'll recognize whether you have children or not, you'll recognize parts of their story and think, oh, I felt that too. And I think that that is where the power of us as women comes into effect. First, we'll hear from Sister Virginia Pierce, who is a former counselor in the Young Women General Presidency and the daughter of President Gordon B. Hinckley and Sister Marjorie Pay Hinckley. She is an absolute delight, and I think you'll love hearing from her. Sister Pierce, thank you so much for being willing to do this.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Morgan. I'm just happy to be here. I'm happy to see you, and happy for the opportunity to think about and talk about mothering. First of all, let me just say something about mothering in general, because it's such a huge topic. And it's so overwhelming to all of us. Every woman who's ever become a mother on Mother's Day just groans because she feels so inadequate. I think, honestly, there are so many good kinds of mothers. We all do it our own way, and I've seen a multitude of different ways where it works. I think mothering, of all things, calls upon just who you are at your core. So when we talk about how do you build this kind of home that you want, where the Spirit of God can enter, it really starts with you. And so it's nourishing yourself. It's, the oxygen mask in the airplane, you put that on yourself first. With mothering, you build your relationship with God. And when you do that, everything that rolls out from that is just good. It's just good. And it leaks all over the house, and it leaks into every room and into every person's life, even though it doesn't seem like it at times.
I think that I love that thought. And I think sometimes I'm not a mother, but I can imagine that sometimes you're trying so hard to take care of everybody else's needs that I remember my mom, sometimes I would be like, have you eaten today? And she would have forgotten to eat. And I think that's kind of the nature of a mother. So can you tell us a little bit, Sister Pierce, about things that you learned about mothering from your own mother? Because your mother is Marjorie Hinckley, and everyone loves Marjorie Hinckley. I think that she's like maybe the most beloved person in church history. So,
Oh, that's so generous of you to say, and I love it that people love her. I think that the most important thing about Mother was she was who she was, and she was comfortable with herself. It wasn't like she thought she was Superwoman or wanted to be Superwoman. She was who she was, and I think that's grounded in this very powerful faith. And so when, as a mother, she didn't need us to perform so that she would look good.
mm.
She wasn't in the way of any of that. And if we found other models for to build our lives on, she was thrilled about it. She was looking at other people and encouraging us to reach out to other people because she was. And I think sometimes we get so hung up with, I'm going to be judged by my children's behavior, that makes it crazy making for kids. That if we can say, I'm going to be judged for my behavior, and they're going to be great people. That was the other thing that she was so good at. She just assumed we were going to be good. And she assumed that we were going to be fun and that we were going to be nice. And so that goes a long way when you live with somebody like that.
How did your parents teach you to create a home that was like a refuge? And what do you think are the greatest challenges that mothers face in creating that kind of home?
I'm not sure. I think everyone has different challenges. I think the makeup of every home is different. The personalities are different. What people come with from the other, from our pre-existent is different. But I believe that the best way mothers can create that kind of home is to have experiences with God themselves, to make sure that they are praying and that they are pouring out their hearts to God, that somehow they are nourishing their spiritual self, because that kind of a home means that God is there because they are experiencing Him, whether anybody else is or not. And that has to make a difference. I believe that's one of the huge things that we have going for us that we don't realize, is that whatever we do, and it may not show right now, it may not show in 20 years, it may not show for a very long time, but in the meantime, we're happy and we're full of joy and we're not undone by the difficulties of life or the difficulties our children are facing or our husbands or whatever.
Yeah. How did you see your mom? And then also, how have you tried to create space to nourish yourself? Because I feel like that could be the really tricky part.
It is really tricky. When my children were young, one of the things I did was I got up early every single morning before they got up, and I walked. And I walked with a couple of friends. I walked alone to meet them. So I had 10 minutes, maybe all by myself, out in the dark world where I could just pray on the way to meeting them. And then they happened to be people who were good and kind and generous and positive. And we would walk or run for 30, 45 minutes, and I'd go home. That to me was huge in terms of my nourishment.
Yeah. I've been home during this quarantine. I have been in North Carolina with my family, and my mom has been going for a lot of walks. I think when everybody's cooped up inside, you got to find a way to get out. So another thing that I love that you wrote in your essay, Sister Pierce, is you said, home is a refuge, but it is also a laboratory, a classroom. How have you seen that in both your home with your children and in the home that you were raised in?
Let me answer that a little bit differently, because I think a lot about how my expanded home still has to be in some ways a laboratory. That I have 6 children who are all married, and I have 27 grandchildren, and there are all sorts of adult people that are still a family and that I'm still a mother for. And when I think about what my mother did for me as an adult, I am appalled that I'm not better at it with my children. And let me just tell you what she did that was just amazing, and it was so her that it didn't seem unusual. She would notice things about you that were great, and just in an offhand, casual way. It wasn't like a speech she'd been practicing. She'd tell you, and they were dumb things. But when you're an adult, you still need a mom who thinks you're fabulous. And I forget that with my adult children. I forget they still have a need to hear from me that they are really great people. And so as I've been thinking about her and thinking about what she did for me, she said, like, I can remember when we moved away for the first time. We lived in Omaha, Nebraska, and she came to visit me. I had just one baby, and I'd only been there about 3 months. And we went downtown to go shopping. And Omaha has some one-way streets downtown. And so I was driving down the one-way streets to go into the parking lot to go shopping. And she said, "Oh my word, Jenny, I can't believe how you maneuver this city. You're amazing. You've only been here 3 months and you know how to do these one-way streets." And honestly, I remember where we were on the road when she said that. Because what it said to me is, I'm doing well out here in the world. And I needed my mother to tell me that. And I think about that all the time, and I think my children, even they're 40 and 50 and whatever, they need me to tell them that they are really doing well out in the world, that they're good moms and they're good dads. And she used to say little things like, she said one day to me, "Oh, I love the way your husband talks to your children." She said, "Have you noticed how cute he is, the way he listens to them?" And I'll tell you, when she said that, I thought, he really is. He's really a good dad, and I'm really a lucky wife. And I think I never, ever heard my parents say anything negative about any of their sons or daughters-in-law, which I think is really kind of amazing. Because,
that's remarkable.
You know, it is remarkable. And when I hear other people complain about their sons-in-laws or daughter-in-laws, and I think, boy, the minute we were married and made that choice, they just looked for the good, and they helped us look for the good. And that is so affirming. If your mother says good things about your husband and your children, that's what you want. You know?
Yeah.
I would call her sometimes and say, "Oh, I'm so worried about so-and-so. I'm so worried about one of my children." And she would just listen. And then maybe the next day she'd call me and she'd say, "You know, I've been thinking about what we talked about. She's going to be just fine. She's really going to be just fine." And I believed her because she's my mother. Somebody else might be able to say that and I wouldn't believe it. But yeah, I think we mothers underestimate the good or the harm we can do all of our children's lives.
Absolutely. Sister Pierce, you are a delight. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with me. My last question for you is, what does it mean to you to be all in the gospel of Jesus Christ?
Wow, that's a big one, Morgan. To me, it means first, last, and always, no matter what happens, I belong to the Church of Jesus Christ. And with all my heart, I believe it is the kingdom of God on earth. And I believe it gets to be my opportunity to build the kingdom. It says the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's my church. He's allowing me to help in his work. And that doesn't just mean church work. That just means rolling forth his light everywhere you go.
Beautiful.
That's what I mean.
Thank you so much, Sister Pierce. Thank you for taking the time to be with me. Wasn't Sister Pierce so great? I love how down to earth she is. And she's that way even when you run into her at a line at a wedding reception. I think that her parents would be very proud of the incredible woman that she is. Next up, we have Brianna Stone, and her story is incredible. For me, hearing from someone like her that is around my same age, it teaches me how age is only a number, and we can have experiences that allow us to be wise beyond our years. So I think you'll love hearing from Brianna. We are thrilled to have you on the show. I have read your essay in this book, and it is exceptional. And I told Brianna this before we ever started, but I'm so glad because she represents like my generation, which is awesome.
The younger girls out there, oh gosh. We're trying our best.
We're trying our best. So I want to start with the essay that people will read in the book, and then we're going to kind of give people an update on what your life looks like now. So in the book, your essay is focused on miscarriage. Mm-hmm. And this is something I just recently had a mission companion that went through a miscarriage, and she told me, at first she didn't even want to tell me. Actually, another mission companion of ours told me that she had gone through this, and I was like, why didn't she tell me? And she was like, well, it's just so hard because you don't like want to seem like you're looking for sympathy, and so no one really talks about it. So can you tell us a little bit about your experience in trying to have children and these miscarriages that you experienced?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. Everyone that I talk to about this has said, oh my gosh, I've been through that, or my best friend went through that, or they have someone close to them that's experienced that, and it's just not discussed. It's almost still a taboo topic, which is so crazy to me because miscarriage is a part of so many women's lives. And that was my whole intent of writing 4 years ago this little blog article on my personal blog, just to share my experience. Long story short, we jump into all of this, and we really struggled. We had 5 miscarriages, 6 babies. Our first miscarriage was a set of twins. And in between that, we had about a year of infertility, so infertility treatments, every test that you can do. One thing that is so frustrating about it, and I think why so many people don't talk about it, is it can be really embarrassing. I mean, you are trying so hard to keep this commandment, and you're trying so hard and doing everything you can to have a family, and it just doesn't work out, and it just doesn't happen.
So in the essay, Brianna, you write about how you felt like you were waiting in the standby line. And I love this idea because it feels like you're having to wait for the right situation. I think this is something that most women and probably men have felt, where they're just waiting for some different aspect of their life to come along. For me, that's been marriage. I'm not married. And so it's like, okay, like you're just watching everybody else file through. So what have you learned about that standby line, and why are you now grateful for the time that you spent in it?
I love this question, because when I thought of that analogy, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And then when I was talking to my husband, he's like, no, it makes sense. Like, you have been waiting so long. And the great thing about the standby line is you always get on the plane. That blessing will always come. And if that makes sense, like when you're in the standby line for getting on the plane, you always get on the plane, whether it's that day or the next day, you're just in that standby line and you're waiting. And I thought of that from a quote from Elder Holland, and that quote sits in my living room, and it says, some blessings come soon and some come late and some don't come until heaven, but for those that embrace the gospel of Jesus Christ, they come. And to me, that standby line was just waiting for that promised blessing that I was just so righteously longing for. I think so often that wait can be so hard because you're thinking and praying, Heavenly Father, I'm doing everything that I can. I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing. I'm keeping my covenants. I'm keeping the commandments. I'm trying so hard, and it just isn't happening. And that promised blessing from that quote from Elder Holland is Some will come soon and some will come later, and some you'll have to wait until heaven.
You have now, this is so exciting that we get to tell people this update. You've now been able to adopt. Tell us
Yes.
a little bit about that experience. Your little girl is so precious. I
She
can't
is so
even handle it.
She's so cute. So that truly is probably the biggest blessing that we've seen from that wait and that standby line. Like I said before, my husband's in medicine, and we're going into the third year of his medical degree, and it's insanely expensive. And we weren't well educated on how much adoption would cost and everything else like that. So luckily, we got some great adoption education about a year ago, and we found out that we could adopt privately instead of with an agency. And so there's two kinds of adoption. There's private adoption, and then agency adoption, and then there's foster care adoption. So I guess there's a few. But private adoption, there's lots of pros and cons to that. But one of the things that is great about private adoption is that it can be less expensive in some cases. And so we fasted and prayed for months to know what we should do, because we felt so strongly about that, and we were just afraid. And so we did it. We in Utah, you can adopt privately, which entails just marketing yourself. So you put yourself out there. We have like a little adoption website about our family, and we just searched for the expectant mom that was hoping to make a adoption plan for her baby. And so during those 4 years, we were just primed and prepped for this. And then Heavenly Father really timed it perfectly. And we found our daughter's birth family over social media. And they reached out to us, and we met with them, and were able to adopt our sweet birth mom's baby. So it's absolutely incredible, though, because we look back on that timing, and we look back on everything that happened to us during those almost 5 years, and see just how Heavenly Father changed us and refined us and put us in the right path and in the right state for medical school and everything else to be able to make it possible. So yeah, she just turned 1 in 2 months ago. And so we have had her since birth, and it is truly the best thing that's ever happened to us.
What have you learned, Brianna, about our capacity, especially as women, to love, and about a mother's love specifically?
I think over the years, after having all of these experiences, I think one of the biggest things I've learned about love is through our Savior's atonement. I think all that I've learned about love comes from the atonement of Jesus Christ. How he not only paid for our sins, but felt every heartache and every hope that we had, and every excruciatingly painful time where a friend has a baby and you just lost one. He felt every feeling that I had on such a personal level. And what a great way to learn how to love from him. And just that strengthening and enabling power of his atonement just helped me when I was struggling the most, and helped me love others and have compassion and care for those that were experiencing the same thing as me, the way he cares for me and the way that he loves me. And a mother's love is something that I didn't realize would be so innate, so ingrained in just who I am. How I love my daughter is something that is just, it's godlike. And I think that is one of the coolest things about becoming a mother, is that is something that is part of who you are. And it's a blessing that God has bestowed upon you as a woman and as a mother to love your child. And I think that comes through our Savior. And another thing that I've learned so much from just what mother's love is from our daughter's birth mom. She is absolutely incredible. And the deep love that she had for our daughter enabled her to make an adoption plan and to find a family that was hoping for a baby and hoping for a family. And she sacrificed everything so that I could be a mom, and learning that from her has been something that I'll never forget and I'll always cherish. And it's such a privilege. It's such a privilege to be able to raise this daughter in my home and with the gospel from this mother who sacrificed everything, who gave everything so that I could be a mom.
Brianna, thank you so much for sharing your experience. This has been, it's
you.
been honestly enlightening for me. So thank you so much. As we wrap up, I just have one last question for you. And that is, what does it mean to you to be all in the gospel of Jesus Christ?
To me, being all in the gospel of Jesus Christ, I think of the primary song, I'm Trying to Be Like Jesus, where it says, I'm trying to be like Jesus. I'm following in his way. I'm trying to love as he did in all that I do and say. And that is like an anthem for my life, is being all in this gospel is trying and doing your best. We hear over and over in General Conference, God loves effort. Just keep trying. Just keep believing. Heaven is cheering you on. And I really do believe that if you are doing your best and trying your best and being your best and falling to your knees to ask for help to be your best, we can become more like our Savior.
I'm so grateful to Brianna for sharing her story on today's podcast. Last up, we have Corinne Lay. You may recognize Corinne as the host of LDS Living's This is the Gospel podcast, but she is also my coworker, and we work together every single day. I have come to appreciate Corinne and her capacity to love people around her, and I think that she has so much to teach us. So I'm excited for you to hear from Corinne. I think that where I'd like to start, if it's okay with you, is leading up to the point where you got married. So tell people, first of all, how old you were when you got married. And then I want to hear about your desire to get married and to have kids and to be a mom before you had that opportunity.
Okay, so first of all, I love that you're like, tell everybody how old you were when you got married. It's actually
That's probably like not polite, huh? I'm sorry.
We're past polite. Also, I actually am really proud of how old I was. I was 34 when I got married, and it was my first marriage and my husband's second marriage. So 34. And I was never afraid to date guys who had kids. That just never freaked me out. What's interesting about that, though, is that I didn't ever think of myself as a stepmother. Like, I just thought I would love someone else's kids and that they'd become my kids, and maybe it would be someone who was widowed or somebody, where the kids would be mine and I would just like own them. No, but
yeah, you would inherit that.
I would inherit them and they would belong to me and our family. Stepmother was never part of the vision. So when I met my husband and he had kids, that was easy. I loved his kids immediately. I loved him. And I was like, oh, this will be easy. It was after we got married and I realized that by marrying into a family where the biological mother was still part of the picture, that's when it got super hard for me. Because all of a sudden I was like, I don't have any point of reference for this. I have no way of knowing how to manage a totally separate family that is somehow part of our family now.
You mentioned, Corinne, your capacity to love, and that was something that you felt like even before Justin came along, that was something that you recognized as a strength that you had. And I think that absolutely is a strength that you have as a human, is a capacity to love. Why would you say, though, that it is worth the effort, all the challenges that come with being a step parent, all of the, I'm sure, so many tricky situations to navigate, and we're going to talk about one of those, but why is it worth it to you?
Well, I don't have any biological children of my own, and I won't ever have biological kids. And there's something really magical about family. I mean, there's a sense of choice that comes in with step parenting, and it's not always easy. It's not always easy to choose that love and to choose that. And I don't know what that's like in another family system, because I've only ever had this particular one as a married person. But it's worth it because it expands us and it pushes us and it offers the kids that we are loving and caring for, it offers them different perspectives on life that they wouldn't get in a different situation. I think about it like I grew up with my parents who I love and adore, and they taught me one way of doing things. But my kids are seeing so many different ways of living the gospel, so many different ways of following Jesus Christ, all with the same end in mind, right? Like we're all trying to get to the same place, but they have all these beautiful examples of living a Christ-like life from 4 different parents, which is really cool. And I think it's worth it to put your heart out there anytime that you can. I think it's worth it to do that heart work.
Yeah. Well, I cannot tell you how many times that I've thought in our office, just like hearing you have conversations with your stepchildren, or hearing you have conversations with Justin about your kids, or you talking to us in the office about how good your kids are and how much you love them. And that doesn't mean that there's not hard things, but I have often thought when those conversations are going on, I've thought, man, those kids are so lucky to be loved by Corinne. And I mean that 100%.
Aw.
So
Thanks, Morgan.
they're very fortunate. The last thing before we get to our all-in question is about this relationship with your children's mother that you talk about in the essay.
Yeah.
I thought this was such a unique take, and I wondered if you could just share a little bit about how you have come to appreciate her, and also what navigating that relationship has taught you about women as a whole.
So I think it's really interesting because I wouldn't advise that every stepmother have this type of relationship with their kid's mother. It really depends on your individual situation. There are a lot of people that this is not advisable for, right? Like there are different types of boundaries and different ways that you have to move in the world. Yeah. So for me, I always wanted kids of my own, and I had very clear ideas about how I was going to raise my kids and what they would care about and what musical instruments they would play and, what time they'd go to bed, just all the things that I thought my kids would have. And coming into a place where they already had a mom, that sometimes really hurt. Like it hurt not to have the control that you think you want to have in your life, the one that you expect. And so sometimes I caught myself thinking of their mom as the enemy, as somebody that was ruining my plans and my dreams for these children that I didn't bear, right? And I got a blessing once for something else. And in the middle of the blessing, the person who was giving me the blessing said the phrase that I needed to seek out a relationship with my children's mother, and that would actually bless my life. And that was not what I wanted to hear in any way, shape, or form, because I was like, I got enough friends and I need a common enemy. And this is really going to ruin all my plans for how I'm going to, how I'm going to move in the world. But I also kind of got the sense that if I wanted to have peace in my life and I wanted to feel joy in my family relationships, that I couldn't ignore this other part of this family. And that was their mom and the kid's stepdad, who is also awesome. And so I set out to strike up a conversation and become friends, but it felt so awkward at first. And then we started to just have longer conversations. And the spiritual impression that I got was that my friendship with her, with Nikki, would become a comfort to me. And I did not see how that could possibly happen at the beginning. And it took a while. I'm not going to lie. It took a while for us to feel that. But now I have an ally and she has an ally, and we are all allied together. And I think that's really what's best for our kids. I'm not saying that's best for every kid. I wish and hope that everyone could have that. but I know that for our kids, they needed that sense of unity. And so now we can sit next to each other they'll save us seats at the high school, junior high choir concert. I mean, I literally have we've laughed together as we've listened to the little screeching violin concerts where you're just like, oh my gosh, this is what parents do. And it's been good for us. It's been good for our family. And you asked what it's taught me about women.
Yeah.
Yeah. About women. I think that we have the capacity to lift one another up, even when we think it's too hard to do. Talk about competition. Talk about competition. I'm sure it's hard for her to feel like there's this other person in her kid's life, that they might want to talk to about the good things that are happening for them. And it would be really easy for me to become competitive with her for their affections, for all the different things that come with parenting. But I've learned that women need each other and that there's enough to go around. I think that that's the beauty of this type of step parenting, is that there's an abundance and the kids feel that. And we as women have the capacity to give that to each other and to the children that we love.
Yeah. I was just talking yesterday, and I think by the time this comes out on audio, this episode will have aired, but I was just talking with Whitney Johnson, who we both know.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that she talked about is creating rather than competing.
Mm.
And I think that what you've done is you've created something really special by resisting the tendency that kind of the natural man has to compete. And instead you've created this really beautiful thing. So I really admire that.
Can I tell you one other quick thing?
Yeah.
So there's this motto in Al-Anon, which is the counterpart to Alcoholics Anonymous for family members of addicts. And they always say in their meetings, you may not like us all. You may not like us all, but you will come to realize that you need us and that we're all important in some special way. And that's paraphrasing that. But I've thought about that a lot. In this situation, we don't even have to like each other all the time. There are going to be times where there's dissonance and things aren't going exactly the way you want. And so liking is a gift, right? To like somebody's a gift, but to love is a God-given gift. And you can love anybody because God and Jesus Christ make that possible for us. So whether you like everybody that you're in a step family or a family with, you can still love them. And I think that can come from the atonement of Jesus Christ through his grace.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Corinne, the last question, you know what's coming. You helped us come up with this question. What does it mean to you to be all in the gospel of Jesus Christ?
Yeah, that's a great question. It changes for me, but I think the essence of it, the essence of being all in, means that you keep moving, you keep trying, and you keep showing up. And when you do get spiritual impressions, you follow them and you seek understanding about what the purpose and the reason for those impressions is. And I really just think it's about building that relationship with Christ and keep showing up.
I love that. Thank you so much, Corinne. Thank you for sharing your goodness
Thanks,
with us.
Morgan.
I am so grateful to Corinne Lay for sharing her story on today's podcast. I'm also grateful to Sister Virginia Pierce and Brianna Stone for sharing their light and goodness with us. I hope that things in their story have resonated with yours and that your heart feels full like mine does right now. If you've enjoyed this special edition of the All In podcast and had never been with us before, you can find all of our podcast episodes episodes by visiting www.ldsliving.com/allin. Thank you so much for watching or listening, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.
Okay guys, that's it. Thank you so much for hanging out with us and for being a part of Deseret Book Live. Thank you as well to Morgan and her guests. Remember to subscribe to the All In podcast wherever you normally subscribe to your podcast. It's available on all the different platforms to make sure that you get the full extended interview that will be released between now and Mother's Day. Okay, it's giveaway time. Not only are we giving away 3 copies of the incredible new book, All Kinds of Mothers, but we're also giving away 1 grand prize. And the grand prize to 1 winner will be one of everything that we have given away so far during Deseret Book Live. So go check out the other videos to make sure you know that full list. Leave us a comment below. We're also going to post the list in the comments in this video. So check that out, comment to enter, and hopefully you are the winner of everything. All of the books, music, the art that we've given away as part of Deseret Book Live could be yours, one of everything. All you have to do is comment below. Find the details in the comments below as well. Thank you so much for spending time with us and being a part of this experience. Until next time, guys, we'll see you.